In a room cold as the tomb, ghosts whispered secrets of doom. Eyes wide open, felt the gloom. In that house, shadows consume.
Hello and good evening out there in podcast land, or good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you may be in the world. This is another episode of Hunting the Shadows heading right at you tonight. So buckle up, buckle in, and buckle down, or whatever you need to do. And hold on for the wild ride we're going on tonight. We've got some very special guests with us, and we've got a lot to get to. But I'm going to unpack a few things here first, right quick. Um, my good friend Jessica Jones had a great show today on the lizard men of South Carolina. Okay, very interesting topic, and if you missed it, you better go check it out. Okay, over at the Cryptid Hunters uh, channel, go check her out. And of course, she has a shop that you need to patronize as well. Don't forget that. That's War Woman Goods over there. I want to welcome some of you in here tonight. Blazer, Area 51, and Shiro, Wizard Moon. Also, my good friend Gerald Fountain had a good show the other day with Barb Hartman. And you need to go check that one out as well over on the Midwest Night Watchers channel. Go check it out. And matter of fact, I'm going to be a guest with her very soon on another episode of Count Nightmare Fuel. We're going to be setting that up. And also tomorrow night at midnight, I will be appearing on my good friend Dave Scott's show, Spaced Out Radio, midnight tomorrow night. Okay, if you want to be there, check it out. And there will be no show tomorrow with Chantel Mayberg, unfortunately. I'm going to be indisposed. But well, definitely we will be back next week with her as well, and with some very interesting stuff. And also want to mention for the members of the Shadow Hunters Club, the Shadow Wolves out there, that I'm going to be dropping a very special video for you very soon. Okay, and it will be very soon, so be watching for it. Okay, absolutely. So. Got all that stuff out of the way, and I want to get ready to bring on the very special guests I have tonight. And we're gonna be we're gonna have some fun with these ladies, definitely. They are the She Squatchers. I love that name. That's marketable. Okay, definitely. That is a great name. And here they are. This is Jenna, and this is Jen. Hello. Good evening, ladies.
Hello.
I
Thanks
was
for joining us.
All right. I was just saying, I love your name, She Squatchers. That's very marketable. That's a great name there. We were missing one tonight, Tammy, but she had something come up, so she won't be able to be here. So we're going to fly without her. But definitely, I'm interested in touching some bases with you guys. This is very interesting. All female squad of Sasquatch hunters. That's great. This is very interesting to me. How long? I'm gonna let whoever wants to start out first here. Okay, you can tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the She Squatchers. Whoever wants to start first.
Well, I'm Jen Cruz. I'm team leader of the She Squatchers. And I'm just going to start out by saying that all three of us are psychic mediums. And prior to doing Bigfoot, we were doing paranormal things. And I used to have a paranormal radio show. And so I ended up at a cryptid or a Paracon in Minnesota, and Lauren Coleman was there. And he's the cryptozoologist who has the International Cryptozoology Museum in the state of Maine. And although I didn't know much about Bigfoot at the time, I recognized that he would be a really good interview for my show. So I asked him if he would perhaps consider doing the interview with me. So he did. We sat down for an hour in person and we did an interview. At which time he proceeded to tell me that Bigfoot was real and indeed was in my home state of Minnesota. Assured me that he was in my home state of Minnesota. And he thought that it would be the recipe for success in getting close to or interacting with Bigfoot if he could get some women to go into the woods without men, dogs, or guns. And he was really, really pushing that maybe we should give that a try. Jokingly, I volunteered right away, but by the end of the show, I honestly said I would give it a shot. And so I asked some of the ladies that I knew at the Paracon that we were at. They were paranormal investigators, and they had those night vision cameras that they use to investigate haunted houses with. And so my logic says we need those cameras to see in the dark, right? Well, they said they'd come out with me. And so the very first time we went out, we discovered that their cameras do not light up the woods like they do haunted houses. So we were virtually blind in the dark. And we ended up having an encounter. And it, you quickly figure out who's going to be a good Bigfooter and who's not when you have an encounter. Either going to do it again because they're hooked, or they want to get in the car and go away. And needless to say, I was hooked. And the majority of the ladies that were with me that night wanted to get in the car and drive away. So I hadn't told my best friends or many people at all that I was going to go look for Bigfoot because I was actually embarrassed that I was doing such things. And so after I had this encounter and I was hooked, I wanted to get back out there and do it right now again. And I needed to find some women that were going to do this with me that weren't going to get scared. So I met up with Jenna. She was one of my best friends. I met up with her when I got back from this experience, and I reluctantly told her what I had done. And she was mad at me for not taking her with.
I was a little bit, but Jen really was embarrassed. And we tell people this. She really was embarrassed when she told me. She was like, Jenna, so when she said she was embarrassed, it's true.
Well, I was telling somebody that the other day. It's very strange, girls. I was telling somebody that, we didn't used to talk about stuff like this. They thought you were like ready for the funny farm, okay?
Right.
The guys in the white coats would come out. We didn't, it was a different attitude back in the day than it is now. But it's very refreshing that it's more out in the open and people are more sensitive. But it sounds like you both got bitten by the Bigfoot bug very quickly. Sounds like.
I think we were born with the bug, baby.
We're very curious people by nature in general. I love chasing great mysteries and I always want to know more. And Bigfoot is like a lot of other things. The more you look into it, the more questions that you have. Even when you're finding answers, the more questions you have. And it's like a never ending to be continued. So as soon as I told Jenna, she came on board. And then I also invited Tammy and my other best friend who did not know Jenna. They did not know each other. And she couldn't join us right away. But as soon as it was possible for her, she came on board. And we created the trifecta that we are now.
Hook like a wheelie, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good. It's good that you're all good friends. At least you got each other's back out there, definitely.
Right.
Watching out for each other. That's good, and that promotes good teamwork too. Teamwork is very important when it comes to stuff like that. Absolutely, yeah. Well, how about you, Jenna? Are you psychic as well?
Yeah, all three of us are. We're all gifted.
Oh, that's interesting. So you were kind of all in the paranormal to begin with before you got into the cryptid stuff, right? Okay, I got you. That's very interesting. My career spans well over half a century now. I've done it all. That's what I said when I first started out. I don't want a little piece of the pie. I want the whole pie. And I was talking about the other day, the very first case I had when I was 15 years old was a werewolf sighting. Okay. And so that's always been part of my makeup, the cryptid part, but I've also been involved in demonology. I've been involved in ghost hunting. I don't like to call it ghost hunting. I call it spiritual research. Okay. And that was
there you go.
But I've always been involved in that. So, how did you both find out that you kind of have you really completely transitioned into cryptid stuff, or you still got one foot in the paranormal thing?
I think we'll always have a foot in the paranormal door. We've been filming some paranormal documentaries as well as the Searching for Sasquatch documentary series. We've been in quite a few of those. I think we're in 11 or 12 documentaries that are out right now. And there's more that are still on the editing table. And of course, we're filming more and more all the time. We typically travel for about a month, or maybe a little bit more than a month, split up film with a film crew out of the year. So we're where we film different documentaries, paranormal, but a lot of Bigfoot, cryptids,
Film
things like
crew
that.
and friends.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to put that in there.
Of course. And it just allows us to have those fun adventures with our bestest friends. And I think that's what makes us blessed. And we keep wanting to continue doing it, because if it's not fun, we're not going to do it, right?
So it's not really a job to you; it's more of a pleasant thing, and that's good, because you should love these things that you're really interested in. That you put your heart and your soul into it. It makes it 100% better when you do that. That's why I've always said, if you're gonna have a job, let it be something you like. Something you love or something.
Right.
Well, a job
Definitely.
pays. A job gives you a paycheck. This does not.
Yeah. But it's about the
Well,
adventure. That's what we're doing it for.
yeah. What do you do? Do you guys also do conventions and stuff like that, and conferences?
We do. We stepped back from that quite a bit because we started traveling and filming more. But we're open. We're open to speak at conventions. We are doing one in September. We're doing the UFO Contact event in Michigan.
Mm.
And so that we'll be talking more about UFOs there and that connection to Bigfoot, perhaps. So, we there's so many topics that we could cover. That it's just, everything is interesting to us. But yeah, we like to do it all.
Yes, we do.
That's what I was telling somebody the other day. I don't know if you agree with this or not, but in some weird way, all of this is somewhat connected. I feel it has definite connections going through it, and that's the interesting thing. But I was going to ask you guys, have you ever had any kind of governmental interference on any of your investigations? Have you ever had any of that take place? I have on some of mine.
Well,
Really?
Like doing
sometimes the police,
drones and stuff like that. Yeah.
the police show up every now and then when we're off in the woods, come in and
Just to
ask,
check.
what are you doing here? Type thing. That's happened quite a few times, but other than that, no.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had a few weird things happen like that. They were definitely, I think, government connected stuff. I think they're watching us to a certain extent. I think they're interested in some of the things that we're doing, definitely. But I was going to ask you, what would be your most, have you actually seen Bigfoot and you've had sightings of him? What was your impression of that? I'll start off with whoever wants to start off with that first. But what was your impression? What impressed you the most about it?
Go ahead, Jen.
The very first time I saw Bigfoot during the day that I was clearly looking at a Bigfoot, he was in a clearing for a power line corridor cut through the woods, and he was standing right out in the open in the daytime, clear as day. I assumed it was a dead tree standing there that just looked like a Bigfoot, because I couldn't believe that was actually a Bigfoot standing there in the day. and it was there.
Is
for
that what
quite
I'm saying? Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, that looks like a Bigfoot, but that's probably just a dead tree. And it stood there for a long time before it finally disappeared. And when it disappeared, I was like, oh my God, that was a Bigfoot. Oh my God. And to be honest with you, Jenna and I both had seen one that at the same time, but we were looking in different directions. So she saw one that was a little shorter and darker colored, and I was seeing one that was about 10 feet tall. And we only know that because it was standing near the telephone or the power line, where it has this black wrapping around the pole, and that starts at 10 feet tall. So I saw that it was as tall as that black wrap. So it was 10 feet tall, and it was like a dark brown red color. And so we both saw one but we were looking in different directions. And when we had just gotten to that property, I mean, we had just arrived there. And prior to getting there, I'm a Reiki master teacher. Jenna's a Reiki master. And we were doing Reiki in the car to elevate our energy for about 45 minutes before we got there. We were super pumping up. And when we got out of the car and started walking on this corridor, there they were. There were 4 of us there. There was the property owner, and then there was an author of a book about that property. His name is Mike Quast. He wrote a book called Sasquatch Central about that property. And we were walking with them. They didn't see the Bigfoots, but we did. So, that leads me to believe perhaps the Bigfoot came out to see what was going on because they sensed our energy was different. And then the other idea that came to mind as an option, we don't know if it's true or not, but perhaps as we raise our own energy frequency, what we see becomes more. And that kind of fits in with levels of dimensions of consciousness. So like a lot of the people on the planet are in 3rd dimension consciousness, but 4th dimension consciousness is a higher frequency. And you can stand together, you can be together and be in completely different phases of consciousness. And so perhaps that what we see becomes more. So there's an idea out there that I've been playing with as well, because they didn't see them and they were right out in the open.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up, because I kind of agree with you a lot on that, because when I saw him, it was more like a spiritual experience in a way, the way that, that it struck me. And like you, the very the few times that I saw him was at a distance, It wasn't, I could see what it was, but it was at a distance. I wanted to see more. And when I actually did have my experience, I mean, he was close enough for me to reach out and pet him on the head. Okay, that's how close he was to me. We made eye contact. And the weird thing was, he had sort of like a surprise expression on his face. I know I did probably, but he definitely sort of like, you see me or something like that, And he stepped behind a big oak tree in front of me, and where he went after that, I have no idea. There was no way possible he could have went on down through the bushes without me seeing him. He didn't go up the tree. He didn't go on I don't know where he went. And I feel without a doubt he stepped over into another reality or something, somehow or another. Whether he went into that tree or what, I don't know. I've heard a lot of supposition on that. So what Jenna thinks about that? What do you think? Do you feel like along the same lines? That's the way you take it too, or what?
Tell me again the question. Like, what are you asking me?
Do you think it's interdimensional? Do you think it's something like that going on?
I definitely think it's interdimensional. I've had experiences where I can't explain how they came through a person. So I definitely think they're moving through trees, orbs, whatever they can. It's all about frequency and movement and appearing, and I really just think they can be wherever they want to be and at any timeline that they want to be too. At least for now. My mind's always changing on things, but
until something else, comes up. That's the way I look at it. And here's the interesting thing: the way you described him, the color is very much the color of the one I saw. Looked very much like sort of a dark brownish red like color to him. It was very strange. And another thing that I remember, after the fact, because it was so quick, I didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it at the time. But there was also almost like, I'm not going to say it was that, but like a translucent quality to his fur. Like it was almost like light was somehow or another not, because I was looking at him through a night vision scope. Okay, when I first saw him, and it was like I've seen other animals through the night vision scope. Let me say this: I've seen bear and I've seen other things. It didn't look the same. It didn't look like that. It was almost as if, the hair on him was like, I don't know, kind of reflecting light in a way. It was kind of weird. That's not the impression I got. I was just wondering what any of you might think about that.
The one that I've seen close up, because the one that I saw on that power line corridor, that was at first 1,200 feet away, and then we got as close as 600 feet before it disappeared. But then at the same property, different location on the property, when we decided to do our documentary there, we came back and we were staying there for quite some time. And where we put our tent was on the deeper part of the property, and they had the landowner, he mows wide trails through his whole property that crisscross, which is really nice for hiking through there. And I'm sure Bigfoots probably enjoy that too. But we put our tent where these two paths intersected. And I was standing by our tent, and I was talking to the book author, Mike Quast. He was standing with me. And the rest of the team was, in a different part of the area that were nearby. I mean, they were there too, but they just weren't standing. I couldn't see them. They were on the other side of the tent. And so we're standing there talking, and I got this feeling like someone was staring at me. And I kind of just follow that feeling, when you turn and you look to see who's staring at you. And I looked into the woods where that feeling was coming from, and I locked eyes with this Bigfoot. And it looked about as shocked as I looked when I saw it. I went, it's kind of what it did. And it jumped back.
Yeah.
And when it jumped back, the trees that it was standing behind just started whipping back and forth really violently. And then it was gone. Well, I'm the only one who saw what caused that movement. And Mike, who was standing there looking at me when I saw it, watched me react to seeing it. And then he looked to see what I was looking at, and he saw the trees whipping. And a bunch of other people that were there on our team were also saw the tree movement. But they went running back there to see if they could track or see anything. And I kind of stayed put where I was so I could see, are you at that spot? And what was there was way taller than anybody on our team, because when they got back there, I couldn't see them. They were too short. So, so what I felt at that time, my impression was that they were just very curious about us. They wanted to see what was going on. They wanted to watch us. They wanted to get close and see more, but they didn't want to be seen. And it just felt like I shocked it as much as me looking it directly in the eye was as shocking to it as it was to me. So, and that one was a black colored one. It was black. So yeah, pretty cool. I never felt like I was in danger or anything like that. Just always feel like they're very curious about us, and they want to know more. They want to watch. They want to see what we're doing. We're not quiet. We're not. Nobody's going to sneak up on them.
That's what people have said to me. Didn't you want to run? I said, no, I wanted to run to him. I wanted to see more of it. That was not enough. But that's the way it goes when it's such an earth-shaking experience for you in many on different levels. And to me, that's the interesting part of it, is that when you finally do see that, I think one question comes to haunt you after that. And that is just what it affected me this way. Now, I'm gonna see what you think about it, okay? But it affected me by saying, if this is real, what I've seen is real, if this is real, what else is out there?
Right. And we're finding other things too. There are other things in Bigfoot. On our hunt for Bigfoot, we are finding other things that are fairy tale things. Like, seriously, we're running into just things.
Yeah.
We are finding more. And it's incredible, because who knew they actually existed? Like, for real. And now they're coming out and talking about aliens and how aliens are, sorry, I'm going on a tangent. Jen is a beautiful speaker. I'm just like a blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'll be quiet. Go, Jen.
Yes, I'll tell you, here's the interesting thing. When you think about these things, and like I say, I've been involved in this a long, long time. I'm finishing up a book that I'm doing right now. And on the back of the book, I put a little thing on it the other day. And this is what I put. When you're a child, you believe in monsters. And then you grow up to find out that they are real.
Yes.
And that's what is sort of like a spiritual awakening for you. You know what I mean? Yeah, definitely.
Once you start seeing things and you're realizing that they do exist, you want to find everything. You want to find out everything that exists. And I think that's kind of what we're on the hunt for is
And
everything.
I worry about some of these so-called monster hunters, okay? And we are monster hunters
Okay.
in a way, if you want to attack us that way, okay? That's what we are. But there are two main rules of monster hunting that I tell people about. And number one rule is the hunter must not become the hunted. Definitely, okay? That's the number one rule. The second rule is definitely a very important one, too. The monster hunter must never become the monster, you know? And I want to see what you guys
Right.
think about some of these people, so-called teams of monster hunters. They go out armed to the teeth, with the guns and all this stuff, waiting to unalive some of these things. If I ever shoot Bigfoot, it's not going to be with a gun; it's going to be with a camera, okay? But what do you feel about that? I mean,
Good.
he looks so darn human to me. Okay, I couldn't shoot him. I wouldn't want to, unless it was a matter of self-preservation. Okay, that's a different thing. If he were attacking me and I had to do something. But how do you feel about that?
We are definitely a no weapons group. We don't carry weapons at all.
No.
At all. So we have been out with people who do carry weapons, but they don't carry them for the purpose of shooting Bigfoot. They're more worried about like big cats or bears or something like grizzlies or
Right.
Yeah.
something like that. Which I understand. Although we just don't take anything with us. I mean, we do have bear spray, but I have yet to take it actually out into the woods.
But we have
I
Tammy.
don't know if I want
So
my life to depend upon bear spray though. Just in case. I do go out armed, but like you say, it's in case you run into a big cat, a bear, or something. Whatever the situation may. And I worry more about human beings than I do monsters, by the way. And I'm ex law enforcement, so I definitely believe in that. But these guys that are out actively looking, so we're going to bring him back, dead. We're going to bring him back as a trophy. That's
yeah.
not to me, and I don't think you feel that way either. That's not a good thing. In other words, to me, and here's the thing I want to throw at you. Okay, I think without a doubt, Bigfoot, maybe Dogman, some of these other cryptids know what your intentions are, and
Oh
these
yeah.
things are incredibly intelligent. Okay, they are very sensitive and intelligent. They're smart. Okay, be able to survive. They are definitely smarter, and we are in some ways. Okay. Um, I feel without a doubt they know our intentions, and if they're not good, they're going to really make themselves scarce. What do you think?
Absolutely. We do believe that they know your intentions and whether you're there to out of curiosity or to harm them, And the property owner that we enjoy going to his property and investigating quite often, he actually believes that they know whether or not you're trying to get him on camera. So he like doesn't want any cameras out there. So that he
Yeah.
can still keep having these really cool interactions that he's been having. So, we respect what his wishes are while we're there, and we just enjoy having our interactions while we're there. And that's the thing. If you want to experience Bigfoot, sometimes you put the camera
Yeah.
down, and things start happening.
It's
Um,
about the experience.
yeah.
It really is.
So, I mean, we do this for our own curiosity, And when we first started out, I was telling the ladies too. I said, we can't focus on finding evidence to prove to people that Bigfoot is real because whatever you get is always going to be suspect. It's
Yeah.
always going to be and everybody's evidence is suspect all the time, and it's getting worse now with the AI stuff. So I said, our focus should be on satisfying our own curiosities and having our own experiences, and we can share with others what we've experienced and what we found along the way, and they can take it or leave it. And that's just how that's our attitude about that.
Yep.
Here's what we experienced, here's what we found. There it is. Take it or leave it.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter to us.
And it's the
That's kind of-
non-believers and the people that are pointing out, oh, that's a fake, that's a fake. Those people need to get out and look for themselves, because they're not gonna, I mean, you can't just critique people who are out there in the field working. If you think that somebody's not doing it right, then you get out there and do it. It's fabulous, it's fun, but you really learn to see and you're a new world.
Absolutely. I've said that over the years. We three of us could have our picture taken with Elvis tomorrow, okay? And we'll know it, but nobody's going to believe it, all right? So, what,
Right.
what is our main purpose? Well, we're not out to prove anything to anybody. We're proving things to ourselves because people are going to believe what they want to believe anyway. That's just the way people are. So, I don't think that's our main job, trying to prove things. We can accumulate evidence, we can take pictures, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying anything. That is an important part of the investigation. Okay. But I don't think the main goal should be trying to prove anything to anybody, definitely on those rounds, because they're not going to believe a lot, what you're doing. Some people might, but the majority of them are not going to do. That's the way they go. But I think a lot of times some of these so-called groups are more like social clubs than actually very serious about what they're doing. I know there's a side of what you're doing you enjoy and you have fun doing it and all that. There's nothing wrong with that. That makes it interesting and worthwhile. But also, though, you should also kind of respect what you're doing. You should
Right.
have a lot more respect and be more serious about it. And some of these guys and some of these groups are just more like social clubs. They go out to have a big party most of the time. And that's why I said there are different ways, and you girls I know will agree with me. There's a right way and a wrong way to hunt anything. If you're going to go out looking for Bigfoot or Dogman or whatever you're out looking for, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And I would rather do it the right way because the wrong way is all just wasting valuable time. You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
and I like your attitude because, you're taking what you're doing seriously. I mean, you're respecting it. And that's good. That's a good attitude to have. Absolutely.
Can I mention one thing though? Um, I don't see us as hunters as much as investigators. Just because a hunt is more about the capture, I just feel like we're investigating. Sorry, I don't mean to be, but it's hard for me to be considered a monster hunter or a Bigfoot hunter. I don't know. Does that sound silly?
Monster Hunter sounds so badass, Jenna.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess we are looking for all the monsters, but
Right? Right?
Well,
hunter is the word I don't like.
a lot of people have what I call Hollywooditis. Okay, they like stuff that sounds kind of very dramatic like that. Definitely. You know what I consider us? I really consider us to be what I would call investigative researchers. That's what we
Yes,
basically are.
yes, yes.
Really, if you want to get down to brass tacks. And I've always been that. And here's the thing about it, and this is what I admire about people like you guys. Um, you get out there and do it. Okay, there's one thing, a lot of people sit at the armchair and they say they read a few books, they think they're experts on it. But when you get out in the field, boots on the ground research, you're experiencing things, and experience is the best teacher of all. You know,
It is.
Yeah.
absolutely.
It absolutely is. And, we may be out there looking for Bigfoot, and sometimes we encounter other things and that we weren't necessarily looking for. And there it is. And, so that's been really cool as well. I know I'm very light skinned, but I am actually Native American as well. I'm a enrolled tribal member of the Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians in northern Minnesota. And so I have talked extensively with Native elders about the teachings about Bigfoot. Um, and so much of the things that they told me in the beginning, I held them very sacred and cherished every bit. But I have this rational part of my mind that goes, I don't understand how that could be true. But I still kept it safely tucked into my bag of information and held it sacred. And then things would happen where we would experience something that made what they had told me make more sense. And so, that's just been a really fun journey for me personally to experience those things and to gain a better understanding of what they were sharing with me.
Mm. Absolutely, I agree with you on that. I spent a lot of time with Native Americans, and we've talked about, or they don't like to talk too much about skinwalkers and stuff like that. Actually, I had an experience with that, but there are more things out there than Bigfoot. That's what I tell people, and I think some of these things may actually be guardians over sacred areas and sacred places. Definitely, without that, I feel that without a doubt. And even the werewolf in Ireland was considered a guardian. Believe it or not, it was not considered a bad thing. So different cultures look at these things in different ways. They interact with these things. And that's what I was telling somebody the other day about Dogman. You don't have a whole lot of native tradition about Dogman because I think it was more centralized and very broad, like Bigfoot is with many of the tribes and the peoples, and especially in the north. Um, but it's still there, nevertheless. There is still talk about that. So I was going to ask you both, what other experiences with other cryptids have you had? You said there are other stuff out there that you've encountered. What have you run upon?
Well, those orbs that people talk about, those self-illuminating balls of
Hmm.
fire, and the ones that light up like a green light at the traffic stop, or blue, or even red ones. We've encountered some of that. Um, my native teachings help me to understand what that is a little bit better. Um, but we've also seen little people, different kinds of little people. So before I ever got into Bigfoot, I had an experience with something that I just thought was some type of nature spirit. And I never questioned it beyond that, until when we started looking for Bigfoot. A native man from South Dakota approached me and he said, if you want to find the Bigfoot, go to Sichahalo in South Dakota. He's right there next to the Chahotnas. And I said, the what? He said, the Chahotnas. And it's spelled Canotina, but it's pronounced Chahotana. And they are the little people of the woodland trees. And basically, they look like Bigfoot, except they're only 2 to 3 feet tall and full grown. And they're like neighbors to Bigfoot. And so they're not like just little baby Bigfoots. They're actually full grown little people, but they're from the woodland trees. And I had an experience with one of those at one point when I was doing something in the woods, and I asked if this was good for this tree or not, because I didn't know and I didn't want to hurt the tree. And I asked for a sign, and because I had been loosening the soil at the base to put some mushroom spawn in it. And I did, nothing happened. And so then I bent over and started loosening the soil some more. And then I saw this Bigfoot looking thing, but it was tiny, leaned down into my ear and growled at me. Then it was just
Hmm.
hanging down from the tree. And I was like, okay, thanks for the message. I'll stop. And that's all I thought about it at the time. And it wasn't until years later, this native man is telling me about the Chahotnas. And I'm like, that's what that was. That's what that was that growled in my ear. And I never quite, I just thought it was some type of a nature spirit that
Sounds
was,
kind of like a pug wedgie. That sounds a little like a pug wedgie that you were
but they look
seeing.
just like Bigfoot. They look just like a Bigfoot. But
Yeah.
they're small, but they're small.
Mhm.
So,
That's it.
um, I've seen little people in different forms. On my
Mhm.
reservation, I saw some that my elder called the river people, and because when I was like, "You see that right there? What is that?" He's like, "Oh, those are the little people. They're the river people. They help me here." And they looked completely different than that. They looked like little people, like almost this joyous little happy kid faces. Um, and they look completely different I mean, I've seen different kinds of little people over the years. Jenna, Jenna, tell them what you saw. You're mute. Mute. Technology will kick our butt every time.
Oh, yeah, I'm really bad at it. Anyway, no, yeah. Are you talking about what I saw when we were out by the sandhills?
Yes.
So we were out looking for Bigfoot, and we ended up Jen's senses brought us to an area where we found some Bigfoot prints, and we decided we were going to go ahead and make a cast. And we made the cast, and then we thought, oh my gosh, we need to get it out, so we need supplies. So most of the people, everyone went except for Jen and I. And Jen and I sat there with our binoculars. We just sat down and we just started looking around, and there was all of these bushes in front, and I was just looking, and all of a sudden I looked, and I laughed, and I was like, oh my gosh, that looks like a little gnome. And all of a sudden it was like this, and all of a sudden after I said that, it went, and it looked right at me, and it scared the living tar out of me. And I'm serious, that was the first realization that Bigfoot could possibly exist, because that thing existed, and it freaked me out. There was no color because it was a monocular, and it was just an amazing experience, but it really shocked the heck out of me. That was the first realization that, oh my gosh, we were looking for Bigfoot, and I just experienced this. That means who knows what else could, what else could exist. I mean, these things are out there. This is not a lie. You guys go out there. These things exist. Aliens, all these fairy tale creatures. I mean, my gosh, we're seeing fairies. We're seeing all sorts of different things, all sizes. It's amazing.
That's what somebody said to me the other day. Why? We were talking about the Appalachians. It's being such a magical like place. And I said I have to wonder. Before we brought these things over with us, what it was like. I think some of these things followed us to the new world. Definitely. But and some of these things that I think that we see and experience, and I have seen some things myself. Definitely like that. They kind of make me think, not all of them now, but some of them may definitely be some type of elemental type spirits, definitely. And of course, you have things like the dryads and stuff like that, and even Goatman that's supposed to be seen. I believe he's some kind of an elemental too, in that kind of way, kind of like the god Pan and all that. But anyway, here's the interesting thing about that, and I believe the Fae do exist because I think I have actually seen them on occasion. The longer you stay out in the wilderness and in these places, I think the more chance you have. But I've had so many people come to me, and I want to see what you think about this. Okay. I've had a lot of people come to me and say, well, Dennis, boy, you sure have seen a lot of stuff. What makes you so special? I've been out here years trying to see these things. I haven't seen it. And I say, well, I'm nothing special about me. I think it's because I'm looking for them. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think you form some kind of a weird connection with these things when you're looking and actively, thinking about them and all that. You're kind of empowering them a little bit, I think, to contact you in some ways. You're more open to it. Don't you believe that?
Right. Oh yeah, open to communication, totally. Totally. I think they do want to communicate with some of us.
They do. The last time I went out to that property, we do remote viewing of properties before we go there. And so I was asking in the remote view to see what was going to happen over the next few days at this property. And then I was marking the GPS coordinates and telling the owner what I was seeing and what was going to happen where. Typically, when I remote view a location, I'll send GPS coordinates to my team and ask them to tell me what they see there so they can confirm what I've seen. If they're seeing the same thing, then we call that a good hit. But this time I didn't tell them anything other than, hey, how about you remote view this property? Boom. And I didn't share with them anything that I had already seen on my remote view. I didn't give them any coordinates other than the property, and they know the property. And I give them the address to the property, and they know the boundaries of the property because we've experienced and researched there quite extensively. But so I'm on my way to get there, and Jenna's messaging me the things that she's seeing on her remote view. And she sends me a screenshot, and she's like, right here, I'm seeing a few Bigfoot looking at the tent. And I was like, that's what I saw, 3 Bigfoot looking at the tent on the left. They're looking to the right at the tent. And then one was on the other side of the trail of where I was going to put my tent, also looking at the tent, and she saw that one too. So it was really fun to just give her a huge property of many acreages of not just specific GPS coordinates and what do you see here? She was looking the whole property herself, and she was coming up with the same things I was finding in the exact same places. So it was really fun. We're gonna have to do that again.
Oh yeah, all the time, please.
Yeah. And those things did happen. The things that I saw on the remote view, all of that happened in the next few days. So it was really, really fun. And I had sent the screenshots of the locations and GPS coordinates and explanation to the property owner of what I was seeing happening where. And and it was really fun. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to get back out there soon.
I know.
Yay.
That's interesting. It's sort of like a blind target too, definitely.
Well,
When you
what
do that.
happened?
Yeah.
What happened before I got there? Like it was like the morning that I woke up of the day that I was going. I was sitting there and I had like a little vision of a Bigfoot like just forming in front of my face and just looked at me. And I was like, yep, I'm coming. It's like he knew I was coming. And that was
That's
very,
interesting.
that was the
Yeah.
first time that happened.
Yeah. That was almost as you had a foreshadowing of what you were definitely going to see. Maybe there was some kind of communication going on there. You never know. You were
That
being,
definitely,
yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense when you think about it, definitely. But yeah, there are so many different things. By the way, the orbs you were talking about, I have experienced them on occasion, and I think some of them, not all, some of them are definitely what I would call forms of spiritual energy. Sometimes they're the one, but they're the ones that seem less intelligent. There are orbs that are very intelligent in the way they move, they move and do things and all that. That's an interesting aspect of it too. But I think definitely there are definite. I believe without a doubt that a lot of things out there in nature have a spiritual side to them that we don't really realize about. Sometimes that we don't understand because it's on a different level than what we are sometimes. And it's hard to.
Mhm.
And that's what I tell people about a lot of this stuff. We tend to humanize things too much. We tend to look through the filter of humanity when what we're looking at is something completely different from that. It's just like we're dressing our dogs up with costumes on and all that. If I were a dog, I would be offended by that. By the way, we try to humanize even dogs and our pets and all that, and really though we have to be very careful about that because it can when you look through something through the wrong filter, you perceive it in the wrong way. And you can do it an
Right.
injustice if you're not careful, definitely. But it is interesting then. And when you get out there in the field and you have these experiences, and I've had a lot of people tell me about seeing these little guys. A lot of the Native Americans had many legends about these. In the section of country I live in South Carolina, by the way, we have the moon-eyed people that these Cherokee talked about a lot. And of course, then further out in the Southwest, you've got the Ant people that the Hopi talked about. You got the people the Apache saw. I can't think of their names, but they were little small people as well. And sometimes they were described as wearing furs. They would have like a fur on them, and they weren't hairy. So you got different types. But let me ask you this question when you think about it, and I kind of formed my own kind of theory on this, okay? That a lot of these things, in order to survive living with us, okay, because mankind is very bad about wiping stuff out, okay? Maybe they had to go underground in many instances, and I feel that a lot of these things are connected to cave systems and stuff. What do you feel? What do you think about that?
I think when there are cave systems available to them, they utilize them, obviously. In Minnesota where I live, there's no indication that they're using fire, and it gets awfully cold up here in the wintertime. And we know that they're not, I mean, maybe some of them migrate south in the wintertime, but they don't all do that because they're still having sightings and footprints are still being found and people are still having encounters here in the wintertime. So they're not all going. If some of them are going, fine, but they're not all going. So they have to be going underground to stay warm if they're not utilizing fire. And we have encountered some den-like structures that are really bizarre. on my reservation, and some of the structures that are being found out there are actually being found also with holes in the ground that lead down into some type of tunnel or cave den being dug out, where that was just covering the entrance to it. So I think that would be what they would need if they were going to stay warm, if in the wintertime up here when it's sometimes 50 below zero. It's just a crazy temperature. And I've heard reports of Native people on my reservation calling the police because there's a woman crying outside at 40 below zero, and they open the door and say, come in, where are you? And she never comes in. They just hear her crying and sobbing, and then the police show up and they chase a Bigfoot off into the woods. And here it was a female Bigfoot that was outside crying. And so the reservation police actually chased a Bigfoot into the woods, trying to catch up with it and track it. And so we know that they're still here in the wintertime.
But that makes me wonder, if they are interdimensional, why would they need to keep warm? You know what I mean? Like, if they can travel.
I think that our understanding of what an interdimensional thing is up for grabs. My idea of what is interdimensional is you could be sitting there in third dimension consciousness and I could be sitting here in fourth or fifth. We'll still see the same experience, but I might see more of it. And so when you raise your frequency into a higher level of consciousness, or a dimension of consciousness, so to speak, then
You can
what's
perceive
already
things.
there in front of you, you're going to start to be aware of it when you just couldn't see it before. So I don't necessarily think that interdimensional means specifically always a different place. It might just be a different level of energy, a different form of consciousness, and a different level of energy being. But it's still all still
Interesting. You're so smart, Jen.
Well, it's just,
I think if you're on a different level of consciousness, you're going to perceive things, a different way, and you may perceive things that no one else can see, and that because you're not on the same conscious level in that way. I see what you're talking about, definitely.
so
But
there's
I
a good
think I'm sorry. Go ahead.
there's a good example of that if you look up the adventures of, I think it's Flatland, where this scientist is trying to explain to you what a 2D creature how they would interpret seeing a 3D creature. And it's completely, they can't fathom what a 3D creature is. They can't see it. It doesn't look like a 3D creature because it's flat in Flatland. So look that up on YouTube. There's really good videos about that, explaining that. But there are different levels above third, because we're in third. Most people are in third, but you can go into fourth, fifth, sixth. You can go up into these levels of consciousness, and things do change.
That's interesting, yeah. And another thing, about the cave systems, and there are some strange connections with Bigfoot and certain other cryptids and cave systems. And if I were going to hide from humanity, that's where I'd go. Okay, I mean that's the perfect hiding place, definitely. And I think that's part of it as well. And you hear about the fairies and the Fey courts, the Sealy courts, and all that. They were all always just underground and tunnels and places like that. So it makes sense. I think there's a definite connection with that in many aspects. And like I said, if some of these things, and we've even theorized that maybe even some of these beings actually are the remnant of people who were the Atlanteans. They may have, come to these shores after whatever happened with these lands. Whatever, might have happened with that. They could have shown up like that. There's a lot of supposition on people who have studied the legends of Ireland that the certain people may have arrived there from other places like that. You have a Tufton Annan and some of these other things that they talk about, the Delcassians and all that, were a strange people, and they talked about them as being magic, but would not you see that as, if they had maybe a bit more greater technology than you would see that as magic. You know what I'm saying? And you can kind of see where they're going. And like we said this before, and we were saying earlier, how you perceive things through the filter of what you're looking through can change your true perception of that thing if you're not careful. And that's why we got to be careful about the filters that we look at. That's what I blame Hollywood for, a lot of stuff, that they have tainted our our culture with things, like I've had children tell me they're very disappointed they can't jump 12 feet up in the air and do somersaults because they see people do that in the movies. Why can't they do it? And I have to explain to them, oh, they're on wires, okay? That's the way. That's Hollywood. Is not real, okay? But that's the way these things are changing our perception of stuff sometimes, and we have to be very careful about that. Absolutely. And we do these things a disservice when we don't try to understand what they truly are in many ways, I think. But and here's the interesting thing when it comes to Bigfoot, especially. I've heard a lot. I want to see what you guys think about this, but I've heard a lot about Bigfoot being able to mock and being able to sing and talk and do other things, even do bird calls and all that, which I think I have actually heard Bigfoot do that, by the way. I think they can imitate birds. They can imitate us. And like you said earlier, I think they are incredibly curious about us. And I'm going to tell you what, that is a sign of a higher intelligence, by the way, curiosity. Okay. The more curious you are, my friends, the smarter you are. Definitely. That's just the way that goes. And I think they are. How do you feel about that? Do you think they have a language? Definitely. Have you ever heard that or experienced it? Or what do you think about it?
So I have, so the weekend that I talked about before, where I remote viewed and then went there, I ended up having to leave a day early because I got sick. But they had another lady come and stay in my tent, so that I was staying in a tent by myself, and so she went and stayed in the tent, and she had heard the talking of the three Bigfoots. She heard them talking. And she couldn't make out any of the words, but she says it definitely wasn't English, and they were having conversations and laughing. And so she was hearing that. So I think that was really interesting. But when we first met Jason Kenzie, which is the filmmaker that we work with in the Searching for Sasquatch film series, we're in quite a few of those episodes. When we very first met him in person, and we went out into the field with him in Michigan, it was supposed to be like a 5-day expedition, and we could only be there for 3 because we had to get to Tennessee to speak at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference. So we had to leave, but right before we left, we found an X in the woods, and it was quite a large one. So Jason decided that he was going to hang his hammock from there that night, and while he was going to sleep there. And I was like, well, I don't know that that's a really good idea, but more power to you, buddy. Nice knowing you. And and so we left because we had to get to the conference. But what happened was when we're filming with him, we don't get to see all the stuff, all the evidence and everything. We don't get to see it all come together until it's out in the world on Tubi or Amazon Prime, and we watch it like everybody else on TV, right? And so by the time it came out and I'm watching it, I got to hear the audio that was recorded by him that night when he was sleeping in his hammock underneath that, hanging from that X. Something approached him, and the audio was for some growling. And then it said, Hawa, and it said words that I understood as Ojibwe language. And I immediately called Jason. I said, Jason, that's Ojibwe language that you recorded there. And he's like, what? And I don't think he believed me. Really, because he didn't go anywhere with it. He didn't do anything. And there's no changing it now. It's already, the film is done. It's already out there. So then fast forward a few years, and I've got him up on my reservation and I'm sitting there with some first speakers, which are people who spoke Ojibwe before they spoke English. And I said, play that audio clip for them that you recorded in Michigan at that X. And so he played it for them, and they were like, what? And they repeated what they heard to each other. And I said, what does it mean? And they said, Hoa, which I understood that means you've surprised me. It's like, Hoa, And then what they said was, get out of here. So
wouldn't that be freaky though? Wouldn't that be freaky if you're out of the woods and he actually, he hears your name, like Jen or Jenna, and he uses that, he says, hey Jenna or something like that. That would be freaky, wouldn't it? That would freak you out definitely. But I believe that they can do that. I believe I've heard that. I've heard that jabbering like. How about you, Jenna? Have you heard? Have you experienced that?
Well, the main thing that I base my thoughts on are the Sierra sounds. And if you listen to that, it's absolutely incredible. The language that they're using, it is definitely a language. They're communicating using the same language. So that isn't an accident in my view.
Yeah, a lot of times you hear about people encountering mimics, out in the woods, and they hear their name. And I have to wonder, and I've said that to other people. Maybe sometimes it's not what they think it is. Maybe it's Bigfoot messing with them. You never know. And
Right.
I believe without a doubt, this guy's got a sense of humor too. Okay, definitely, I believe that. But it is fascinating, and the more you get into this, and the deeper it's like quicksand. Okay, the deeper you go, you get into it, the more it gets you. It kind of pulls you in. But what do you think? What do you see yourself doing in the next few years? Are you going to be doing some documentaries on this? You're going to be doing some more? You maybe some books? What are your future plans?
Jen would be an amazing book, right? Jen, you really need to write a book. You or five or
Or 10.
series or 10.
Or 10. Yeah, we've got to get some work done on that. But yeah, we are definitely filming. We have a big expedition coming up that we are not saying where we're going, but it is the longest expedition we've ever done. Um, so we have that coming up, and we didn't even do our we normally do like an early summer expedition for 2 or 3 weeks, and we skipped it this year because we have such a big one coming up in August. So um, we're really excited for that. So yeah,
That sounds
that's,
good.
that's our main focus right now.
Yes.
Mm.
Getting ready for
Well, you know
that.
what?
Oh
I've
my
always
goodness.
said that. That's very true. You can't just walk out there for a day or a few hours and expect to really experience this fully. You're going to have to stay out in the field quite a while, at least a month, to really, put a dent in it. Okay, put it that way. To really do what you need, some of the stuff you need to do, because this is definitely field research, and that's what it requires.
And
Right.
you know what a lot of people don't understand is we don't get paid to do this. We do this on our
No.
own time, and
Yeah.
I
And
take
time.
time off of work to go and do this. So I don't do like regular vacations. I go bigfooting for the most part. And so this is how I choose to spend my free time. So I'm definitely passionate about it. My team members are passionate about it, Jenna and Tammy. And we definitely, I mean, it wouldn't be fun. I don't think it would be as fun without them, because
No.
it wouldn't. It just wouldn't be as
It
fun.
wouldn't.
It would be
No.
We're
nice if
all
we
three
got paid
nuts
for it.
together. Huh?
What's that?
It would be nice we got paid for it, but anyway, no. Well, here's the thing about it, like I said earlier in the broadcast, it's what you love. It's what you enjoy doing, and that's what makes it more worthwhile than even compensation for it in many ways. I've done a ton of things in my life I never got paid for, definitely. And that's not what it's all about. If it's just strictly about the money, you're probably coming from the wrong direction, and you've
Yeah.
seen this, I know, without doubt, that there are people in this field and all the different fields of the paranormal they're basically in it for the ego trip that they get out of it, the fame, the glory, whatever you want to call it. And they're also in it about making money. That's what it's all about. And whenever you sell out to the commercial aspects of a lot of this, you lose the real, I think, true spirit of
You
investigative
do.
research, in many
Yeah,
ways.
it's got to come from the heart. True investigators, it's coming from the heart. It's a passion that you
Mhm.
have. And I think that's so important. And I agree. When it comes to money and fame, this isn't don't be a bigfooter. You're not gonna get rich and famous. You just won't.
That's true.
Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely, I agree. Well, I really have this has been a great show, and we're definitely going to have you back on here in the future, and we're going to check in with you again on some of this stuff. Okay, definitely. But I wanted to say I appreciate you all for being here tonight. Definitely, it's been fun. And you want to tell everyone what if you got any plans coming up? Whoever wants to start, you got something coming up that you want to tell everybody about or anything?
We're going on our big expedition, and we can't
But
say
we can't
where.
say. Mm-mm.
You'll never know where we are exactly until after we've left.
Right.
That's the best way to do it, right? So nobody's going to be out there hoaxing us because nobody knows where
Yeah.
we're going to be.
Right, right. It's a good idea to keep things quiet like that until it's finished. And then you can.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Jenna? You got anything in the future coming up with besides that, or
As far as personal
yeah?
or just Bigfoot? I think we're
Okay.
all together on the Bigfoot journey of a lifetime.
Yep.
Well,
I've
Soon,
get
got
to
some.
work on that book. Get to work on that book. Okay.
right?
That would be neat. Uh, somebody asked me, I've written several books, and somebody asked me, how do you get started on that? And I said, well, you got to start. That's where you go. You got to begin. And like the
Right.
Chinese say, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And that's the way that goes, definitely. But I do admire you, and you are where I was at many, many years ago. And I know where you're coming from this, and I can only say that I respect you definitely for what you're doing out there. And I think it's neat. You're all female group, and you're taking it from a different perspective. I hope you're not on the macho thing that a lot of those guys out there are definitely on. So I like to see different perspectives and the way people take it differently on these things. So that's great. And you got my support definitely on that. And I really do appreciate you both being here tonight. And maybe next time we get together, all of us will be here, okay? And hopefully,
Yes.
and that will be neat in the future. But I really do appreciate you all so much for being here, and it's been awesome, absolutely. And thank
Fabulous.
you. And if I think if your friend is watching, you could put up your if you got a email or a
Hi,
you
Tammy.
got a oh, is that you? Okay. Well, if you could put up a website or anything, you got that. I'll put it up on the screen. Okay. And I will definitely do that before the show's out. But anyway, I
Well,
appreciate you all so very much for being here. It's been fun.
we are going to
And
be.
you got any last words for everybody out there?
Come see us at the Michigan UFO Contact in September 26 and 27 in Michigan. We're going to be there.
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll be looking for that. Definitely. All right. Well, thank you both so much. And hang out in the green room till I get back with you in a few minutes here, okay? And I'm going to close out. But thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you for having us.
Have a good
Thank
Bye bye.
you. Bye.
All right, the She Squatchers. Well, that was fun. Like I said, it's a great different kind of perspective on those things. And it's always good to see how other people take these things to do these. It's very interesting. But all female group out there, that's neat. But I want to appreciate you. I appreciate you all for being here tonight and for supporting the show. And thank you so much for being here. And I appreciate you all definitely. And go check out the She Squatchers. I will put up I will get their website and put it up for them. Definitely. And for anybody out there that wants to do that and maybe support them as well, okay, that would be a great idea. But thank you all so much for being here tonight. It's been great. And take care of yourselves out there. And remember, Godspeed, my friends. And until we get back together again, I will see you in the shadows. The hunt has begun. Hunting the shadows.